What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we're talking about Architects and their new album For Those That Wish to Exist via Epitaph Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Architects is a UK metalcore band formed in 2004 by twin brothers Dan and Tom Searle. Originally influenced by mathcore groups like the Dillinger Escape Plan, their early albums were a much noisier technical affair before shifting to what would become a bit of a golden era for the band with 2012's Daybreaker. This was followed by the highly lauded and my personal favorite album Lost Forever, Lost Together in 2014, which further cemented the band's djenty guitar sound and Sam Carter's legendary bleh as a blueprint for the genre for years to come. Sadly, guitarist and primary songwriter Tom passed away from cancer in 2016, with the also popular All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us being his final album. Since then, the band has seen a bit of a shift in tone, with 2018's Holy Hell taking an understandably more somber tone with increased use of clean vocals and overall shift in approach. As much as it bothers me to say it given the album's very personal nature and tributary tone, I found myself pretty underwhelmed with the release and wondering where the band would go in the future. This brings us to present day and this 9th studio album For Those That Wish to Exist, with many fans seeming to ask themselves the same question. Thematically, the album is about as dark and at times nihilistic as we've come to expect from Architects over the years, dealing with the part humanity is playing in the world's destruction and an uncertain future. Certainly topics more appropriate than ever in the current year. As the band puts it, For Those That Wish to Exist hangs in a limbo between the energizing possibility of a course correction and the paralyzing negativity of defeatism, calling on all humanity to rise to the challenge. Taken straight from the press release, this album was me looking at our inability to change to a way of life that would sustain the human race and save the planet. I wanted to look in the mirror and ask ourselves the question, what are we going to do, as opposed to trying to point the finger at politicians? Change has to start at a personal level. The world has developed a culture of wanting someone else to deal with it when we need to take our own responsibility. It has to start there. If nothing else, it's a message of self-determination that I can certainly get behind.
Just do it!
As for the music, it's still kind of a mixed bag for me. Starting with the good, the production on this album feels like a massive improvement from Holy Hell. While I'm not always a fan of Sam's increased focus on singing overall, I can't deny that his performances sound much better on this new outing and are often radio-worthy levels of catchy. Holy Hell had kind of a weird auto-tune sounding quality, whereas here it's clear that he's really been honing his vocal craft on tracks like Goliath. This one in particular was a standout for me for other reasons as well, namely its super heavy chugging guitar passages to offset the more drifting kind of post-metal and highly melodious chorus. That's not to mention having arguably the most barn-burning screaming section of the entire record, courtesy of Biffy Clyro's Simon Neil, and awesome string-infused outro. Speaking of which, there are quite a few orchestral elements scattered throughout the album, including lead singles Black Lungs and especially Dead Butterflies. The latter was actually the first single to truly turn my head leading up to the release, with its massive sounding brass and further string arrangements that are absolutely worthy of the big concert hall setting of its music video. If you ask me, this is modern Architects at its strongest, crafting stadium-worthy anthems that are like a strange fusion of later career Norma Jean with a few tips from Dimmu Borgir. Demigod is another personal favorite in the same vein, with more symphonic elements on display alongside really interesting weird warbly guitar riffs and electronic effects, making for a truly unique soundscape that really stuck out from the other tracks in a big way. For some reason, the string arrangements here kept making me think of the Beatles' more experimental tracks, even if the end result is anything but. Catchy lyrics on this one too, even if they are pretty cliche. Even so, I'll be singing that glass half empty, still sinking like a stone part for at least the next month. Other lyrical moments that definitely caught my attention along the way were the highly relatable and equal parts heavy and catchy "Discourse is Dead," EDM-infused "An Ordinary Extinction," which I also might add has some of Sam's most heartstring-pulling scream-singing highs in years. And of course the emotionally potent closer "Dying is Absolutely Safe." This last one is another bar-setting composition for Architects, and there really could be no other way to close out the album than by leaning so far into the strings and acoustic as to fall into their blissful oblivion. Now, for all of that praise, there are also plenty of problems to go with it. For one, at 15 tracks over nearly an hour, For Those That Wish to Exist is a decidedly bloated affair. Like, I think there's a potentially great 35-minute or so A-tier album to be found within, but you've got to sift through a lot of B-side material to get there. I know my comment section and the stands out there well enough to know that that's going to ruffle some feathers, but like I always say,
yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Like, even with some of these stronger, more traditional sounding Architects tracks like Black Lungs, whose guitar hook and overall hard-hitting approach I like quite a bit, there's little arguing that this pales in comparison to past material like this. Also, fun little note while editing, I was reminded that one of the lyrics to this song is "The past is dead." I'm not going to join the no blach, no deal crowd either, but I can't shake the feeling that songs like Giving Blood, Little Wonder, and Libertine feel very much like Architects Light, retreading old ideas but without the same level of skill and technicality that made those ideas so enjoyable to listen to in the first place. Not even further guest appearances from Royal Blood's Mike Kerr or even Winston McCall of Parkway Drive can make up for that. Again, all the more reason to just give in completely to this new direction as to abandon future comparisons altogether. We still have the 2000s era albums to enjoy, fellas. There's no reason to rinse and repeat. Furthermore, lead single Animals really did not start out my first impressions on a high note. It's certainly not a terrible song by any stretch and has even grown on me a bit with repeat listens, but I still stand by the moniker of Imagine Dragons core in relation to this one. On the other hand, even as someone who can't even begin to fathom why people like Imagine Dragons to begin with, I will say that the upside of a track like this is their potential to act as another gateway for new metal listeners. God knows most of us didn't dive headfirst into black and death metal. We were slowly lulled in by the Pied Pipers of alternative music and hybrid bands like Linkin Park. As they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So in the end, I'm somewhat torn. It would be really easy for anyone to say that this album is either a tour de force or pile of crap and call it a day, and in fact I went in somewhat expecting to do the former. But on a deeper analysis, there is just as much here to applaud as to deride, and I find myself somewhere in the middle. In a way, I have to respect that, as any record that inspires this many words to describe is certainly doing something right. Turning to my scales, I give For Those That Wish to Exist an 8 for enjoyability. Again, if we relegated a few of these tracks to a B-sides collection to tighten up the focus and runtime, I'm confident that the result would be more than worthy of a 9 or even a 10. That said, there are really no bad tracks here, just less memorable ones. I give it an 8 for musicianship. Honestly, if we were just talking about the standard instrumentation, it might even be a 7 in just how average most of those elements kind of come across. But thanks to some interesting songwriting, solid production, and most of all the symphonic additions, the sum total still manages to make for an above average performance. And I give it an 8 for innovation. I'm still a little on the fence as to how I feel overall about the obvious shift in direction, but as always, I'm willing to pay credit to a band with the balls to shake things up for better or for worse, especially one with such a diehard fan base. They could have easily just recycled Lost Forever ad nauseum to sell record after record. Instead, they took a chance and again offer a lot of potential for new listeners both for themselves and, if we're thinking long game, the metal scene as a whole. So another case of 8s across the board and just barely a B- for those who wish to exist. Get it once more via Epitaph Records. Y'all, thanks so much for watching, and given my especially mixed thoughts on this album, I'm even more so interested to hear your opinions in the comments. Do you love this new direction? Do you hate it? Or are you somewhat conflicted and in the middle like myself? Let's have a discussion in the comments, and also let me know what's your favorite Architects album. And hey, hit that like button and stick around, because I got plenty more videos coming right after this one, more album reviews, tier lists, interviews with bands on the podcast, lots of reasons to subscribe if you have not already. Also chat with us on Discord and support on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.